Hi, my name is Professor Ben Carrington. I'm an Associate Professor here at the University of Texas at Austin in the Department of Sociology, and I'm here with 3 graduate students, and we're going to speak to you a little bit about some of the research we've been doing here over the past few years. My own research looks at questions of race and cultural identity, and particularly popular culture, and I've written quite extensively on sports cultures. Last November we went to the North American Society for the Sociology of Sports annual conference, which was in New Orleans, and all 3 of the students here came with me. It's the NAS conference, as it's known, is the premier international conference that takes place once a year in a different North American city, and it really kind of showcases a lot of the best work that's taken place around sports studies. I was there presenting on some of my work, which has been around cricket in the Caribbean diaspora. So for the past 15, 16 years I've been doing an ethnographic study of a black cricket team located in the north of England, and exploring issues around identity, and particularly around gendered and racial identities. So exploring forms of masculinities and how they're produced and performed within sports spaces, and also looking at the intersections between race and gender. And so I originally did that research back in the mid-1990s, and that formed part of my PhD research when I was at Leeds Metropolitan University. And about 15, 16 years later, after I left the ethnographic field, I went back there in 2011. So for the past 2 summers, I've actually gone back to the original ethnographic field where I did my research for my PhD, and I've done a series of follow-up interviews. So it's what we might refer to as an ethnographic revisit. You revisit the ethnographic scene. That doesn't tend to happen too often, so it's quite a unique case study. I'm in the process right now of writing up that research into a book. So one of the things we also try to do is to encourage not just professors to present at conferences, which is what is expected, but also to encourage our best and finest graduate students. We have 3 of our finest graduate students with us today, Nick, Anima and Letitia. They're going to introduce themselves and just tell you a little bit about their research and also their experiences of going to conferences. So for some of them it was their first professional conference. For some of the others they'd gone once or twice before. But it's a really important part of the professional process to begin to go to conferences such as that. So not only that you get to present your work and to get feedback, but so that you begin to network. And it's often really good for the students to get to meet some of the professors from outside of UT, whose work they've read, whose work they're engaged with, and to get to meet them on a one-to-one basis. So first off, we're going to introduce Nick, who's one of our new first-year students. Nick?
I'm Nick Sheck. I'm a first-year student coming from Marquette University. My research for my senior thesis involved distance runners and the idea of masculinity and bodies and non-conforming bodies. So that was the research I presented on at NAS. And in terms of being a first-year graduate student at NAS, what I took away from it was just the dialogue with scholars and getting feedback on my research, going to other presentations and seeing different sorts of research and how that could influence what I'm doing, and it sparked some of my interest in other concepts and whatnot.
Were you nervous for your first ever?
I was very nervous, but we also did a practice session before we left, which helped immensely in terms of getting feedback from other graduate students and people in the department.
Yeah. Well, your presentation was great and you didn't seem nervous. So.
Yeah, so I'm Anima and I'm a second-year graduate student. I was actually in the same section as Nick was at NAS, and so it was great because we actually, like he was saying, we worked a little bit on it here together, but we also all 3 stayed together, and so we had the opportunity to not only give feedback and get feedback here on campus, but once we were in New Orleans, we were able to, following different presentations, find ways to make sure that our conversations were really in tune with each other. But before I talk more about NAS, I actually want to talk a little bit about how I got here to sports, because I never really thought I was going to be studying sports in any real way, but after I graduated from college, I was actually coaching rugby in Southeast Asia and was absolutely fascinated by the diversity of gender expressions on the rugby team there. And so it really got me thinking about what are the different ways in which gender is expressed on sport teams and what are the different ways in which off the team that gender is kind of plays out in different communities and societies. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. I'm currently working on my master's thesis, and for that I have done interviews with women rugby players, and I'm in the process of writing up my analysis, and I'm really thinking about gender as a complex identity, not just masculinity or femininity, and thinking about how race and sexuality are, complicating performances of gender on and off the field, how it's informing relationships between players. So last November at NAS, what was really cool was that I got to present some of my initial findings, and I was talking specifically about masculinities and femininities on the teams that, they were a team from the interviews that I had done. So the section that we were in, Nick and I, was looking specifically at multiple masculinities and femininities, and it was just a great opportunity to have conversations with different scholars around different areas of sport and how their respondents, because a lot of the research that was presented was qualitative, but how the respondents were thinking about their own notions of masculinities and femininity. So that was a really great opportunity, and as Nick said, it was just really nice to be able to see the different arrays of scholarship on sport and how they're really fitting it into these larger conversations.
And finally but not least, Letitia.
Hi, I'm Letitia Brown, and I'm a third-year student here at the Department of Sociology at University of Texas. This was actually my second NAS conference. My first conference was in 2011, in which I presented a chapter of my master's thesis that actually grew out of Ben's Critical Theories of Race and Racism course, which I took the spring before. I looked at the ways in which the media represented Caster Semenya in the 2009 World Championships in Berlin. The paper actually won the Barbara Brown Student Paper Award at NAS in 2011, which was really excellent. It gave me a lot of good feedback on how to expand that chapter into my larger thesis project, which I finished this past summer, which looked at Caster Semenya, Florence Gifford Joyner, and Marion Jones. I, too, like Lady, never really thought that I would study sport, but after taking class with Ben, I really kind of fell in love with the topic. So this year at NAS, I presented a working paper about Gabby Douglas, and the representation that she received focused primarily on her hair as opposed to her accolades as a gymnast. That went really well, and I was also afforded the opportunity to be elected the graduate representative of NAS for the next 2 years, which has given me a lot of space to network with faculty from all around the world, like Dr. Cheryl Cookie out of Purdue and Dr. Mike Mesner at USC, and so it's just a really fantastic opportunity. Currently, I'm leaning in a different direction for my dissertation. I really want to focus on health, mental health in particular, in relation to discrimination and body weight among Black Americans, but I do still have a soft spot for sport, and I'll definitely continue to do my research in that field as well.
Now, I think all three of your projects are a good example of how looking at sport is a way to kind of look at other issues around violence, around gender identity, around health, around self-esteem. So I think it's, and especially being where we are now, if we think about the physical location of this new building, so we have this fantastic new building, really nice offices, it's really great space for graduate students and for faculty. But to one side of us we have the UT men's football stadium, the Dell Memorial Stadium, and in front of us, the other side, we have the recreational gym. So actually, our department's actually surrounded by sports cultures, both at the recreational level and at the professional level, or semi-professional level, depending on how you define college sports. So as sociologists who are concerned with trying to understand the world around them, it seems the least we can do as sociologists in the Department of Sociology here at UT is actually recognise just how much sports kind of impact the college campuses, not just here at UT, of course, but across the US. So I think it's a good example, actually, of how we attempt to kind of grapple with and to engage with questions and issues which are personal, which literally and figuratively surround us.